What's up, Fire Dogs? Before we get into the episode, I'd like to make a quick plug for our Facebook mentorship group called Fire Dog Mentorship. The group has over 600 members and offers them opportunities to become mentors and to seek mentorship. I can tell you that I've connected with 2 mentors since starting the group, and they've offered me a lot of help. At the very least, I've made a couple friends that I can bounce ideas off of and ask for help in a variety of ways throughout my career. The group also has learning units, which is essentially a repository of documents, videos, and websites for firefighter learning and development. We're always looking to add to the collection. So if you have something that you think that would benefit the group, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, the firedogpodcast@gmail.com. Send us what you got. If you want to join the group, go to facebook.com/groups/Firedog Mentorship and click join to be a part of the experience.
This is the Fire Dog Podcast.
The views and opinions presented on today's episode are those of the speaker and do not necessarily represent the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.
Welcome, my name is Matt Wilson. Thank you for joining us for episode 23 of the Fire Dog Podcast. Our guest today probably has his hands in more than anybody else in Air Force fire protection. He's the Fire and Emergency Services Operations and Fire Vehicle Program Manager and is involved with apparatus acquisitions, the Emergency Medical Services Program, and the Next Generation SCBA. He also represents the Air Force Fire Service on 3 NFPA committees. Please welcome Mr. Fred Terryn. All right, Fred, well, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, joining us and sharing your insights on what you're involved with in fire protection. I know there's a lot of listeners that are going to be interested to hear what you have to say. You mentioned to me the other day, there's a bunch of people emailing you all the time asking questions. And so maybe us recording this podcast can help eliminate some of that, So we'll start off just you telling us a little bit about yourself, before we get into our talking points and, how long have you spent in the Air Force and maybe some of the bases you've been at?
All righty. Sure. Thank you guys for having me on this. Looking forward to this and getting information out to the field. I'm Fred Terryn. I've been in the Air Force Fire and Emergency Services since real early in the 80s. So I guess it's about 30, coming up on 39 years. I did 21 years on active duty and fire. And then I've been at the Air Force Civil Engineering Service, Civil Engineering Center for 17, almost 18 years now, working in the Fire and Emergency Services division. And I guess multiple TDYs over the years. On active duty, 9 different stations. Some of them obviously closed now, but I did start out at Laughlin, Bentwaters, Woodbridge, in England, Grissom, Wright-Patterson, McConnell, Tyndall Air Force Base, Thule, Greenland. I did a stint as a recruiter as well. So they tell me I can sell just about anything. I don't know about that one, but.
Well, you are the vehicle acquisition guy, so perfect spot for you.
Yeah. And being at the, originally was AF FES, the Air Force Civil Engineering Support Agency. And over the years, obviously, the one thing about the Air Force that is always constant is change. And they've changed the name over the years. And so now it's the Air Force Civil Engineering Center. But I've worked in a lot of different things there. There isn't too many of the areas at AFCEC that I haven't worked in fire. And then currently doing operations and fire truck program. I mean, my hands are in hazmat, confined space, incident command, you name it. So there is, I understand the history and why decisions were made over the years since I've been there. So that helps when you go forward and you look strategically.
Yeah, certainly. You're involved in a lot, and we hope to highlight a lot of that. I know we probably couldn't cover everything in just one episode, considering that you've been in 39 years and you've probably had your hands on just about everything. But we're going to try to hit some of the high interest items, I guess you could say. Out of all the places you've been, what was your favorite?
I'd say probably Thule, Greenland. Obviously, it's a 1D position, but it's just it is probably the most unique place I think I've ever been to. It's extremely cold. They only have maybe 30 days of temperatures above freezing. But they say you're really only there for 2 days, one long day and one long night, because it's like 137 days of 12 midnight and 120 some days of 12 noon. So that's why they say you're only there for 2 days, So, but no,
I feel like you're probably the only guy that would say that was the favorite spot. I was guessing you'd probably say Tyndall, considering you're living in Panama City or somewhere warmer than Greenland.
I grew up in northern Michigan, towards the Upper Peninsula. So it's not like I want to stay in cold weather, but I make the most of it. And I enjoy the beach. The heat can be a little overwhelming with the humidity here, but I make ends meet wherever I am. But from a perspective of someplace that is unique that very few people ever get to go to, it was. I would just say the views were the most impressive of my career, where I've been to in the world. So,
gotcha. Well, if we could, let's get into a little bit of what you have your hands on in fire protection. I know a lot of our listeners are going to be interested, including myself, in how vehicle acquisitions happen in the Air Force. So, can you walk us through that process? How are they designed? How are they selected, and all that kind of stuff?
Sure. I guess probably the first thing that people always want to know is how do we go about getting the funding, right? And that is through the Defense Authorization Act. There's a line item when they say that they signed off the budget. Obviously, for the last many years, we've been under continuing resolution, but we have a funding stream there that's really, to be honest with you, the only thing that is funded in Air Force Fire as far as what they call a PEC, right? And many years ago, they signed us up for $25 million. Obviously, we have to have more than that nowadays because of the recapitalization rate that we try to be at 20 years. But that comes through that funding stream, and that gets notified to the Life Cycle Management Center, and then also to the vehicle folks, VSCOS, which you might be familiar with. That's there in Langley. That's the headquarters for vehicles, and they notify us what was in that budget, and then we start working it from there. As far as they put together what I call the 1 to N list, which is a prioritization of vehicles that had to be replaced. And it just depends on how much money we get, right? As an example, if we were to get $25 million, you can almost figure that you can get about 2 vehicles a million. So you're looking at somewhere between 48 and 52 trucks for about $25 million, okay?
Now, are all those bought at one time in one kind of big chunk, or are they spaced out over time?
So that's an interesting question. So when the money is dropped and we get the list, right? It's bought with what they call 30/80 money. That's the color of the money, right? Now that money is 3-year money, which means it has to be executed within 3 years. Otherwise you lose it. Okay. Versus if you've ever heard of 3400 money, that's something that has to be executed in that year that it's given to you. But we get 30/80 money is what's given for buying any type of new vehicles. It doesn't have to be fire trucks. It could be bulldozers, police cars, you name it, right? So the reason I say it's 3-year money is because the way the process works, we have to go through the Defense Logistics Agency, or DLA, and that's who puts the contracts out on the street for manufacturers to bid on. All right. So I'll try to make it quick. I'll just kind of walk you through it where the money is dropped to the Life Cycle and 441st or VSCOS, like I said. Then they let me know. They give me the 1 to N list and a big old spreadsheet. And then I got to start going down that list. And if I was to say skip a vehicle, I have to give justification why. So an example might be the very first truck might be one that we bought 2 years ago. For whatever reason, it didn't get that replacement truck didn't come out of the system. but it still rose up to the top, right? So I say, hey, I already bought that truck 2 years ago, or I bought that truck 3 years ago, because I have to keep track of all the registration numbers, right? And then I tell them I'm not buying it again. I already bought it once. So then I just start working down the list until I've used up all the money. Once I've used up all the money in that buy year, then I send it back to them and say, hey, here's the list. Here's what we're buying. And then they look it over and make sure they're all good with it. And then they come back to me and they say, go forward. That's when I contact the fire chiefs or the deputy fire chief, right? Depending on what the situation is at that base, whatever positions. The fire chief might be a vacant position, you know where I'm going? So I send them documents that it's the shipping paper and ordering options, because every fire truck, the type of fire truck, we have, I think we're at about 14 types of fire trucks now. There's different kinds of ordering options that the department can choose. I know there's a ton of stuff out there in social media, right? On why do we get this on a truck? Why do we get that on the truck? Trust me, I save all my emails from the department because somebody ordered it, all right? Fred Terryn doesn't order stuff on the trucks, certain things, okay? So the fire department fills that out. They send that back to me. And as an example, say we're buying 10 P19s, right? I got to package all those 10 from the different bases into one like big PDF. And then I send that off to the Life Cycle Management Center. Then it's up to them to go through their model of packaging it to give it to DLA. Then DLA puts it out on the street for bid. And then the manufacturers that want to bid on it, that are certified in the DLA system, bids on that contract. Okay. And it's the same if we're buying 10 P19s and 5 P23s and 3 Quints and 7 Aerials, the packages go out as a group out on the street to DLA, right?
So I imagine the designs are relatively similar. When you say you can piece together what you want, that's probably larger compartment size here, or are we talking like I can get a side mounted pump if I wanted to, or a mid mounted pump if I wanted to? And
yes,
so the fire chief can decide that. Yeah.
So when you look at some of the options, like what you just brought up on a P22 or P24, right? Do you want a top mounted pump or do you want a side mounted pump? Do you want calves or no calves? Like on the hazmat trucks, do you want a cascade system or no cascade system? On some of them, do you want a 4x4? Do you want a 4x2? It just depends on what your authorization is and if you want to change that authorization, right?
Now, there's probably limits to that, right? So if I'm reading through, X Engineering magazine and I see this one that looks really cool and I'm like, hey, boss, I want this truck. They can't probably come to you and say, I want this custom off the shelf, brand truck that we're not buying, right?
Like a clean cab truck. They have those clean cab trucks out there.
Yeah, they probably want to stick within certain companies or certain types, right? I mean,
so you guys are raising a few different questions there. So in the DLA system, the manufacturers that are in there, your Rosenbauers, your Oshkosh, they have to be certified in the DLA system. And that certification is good for 5 years. And then they have to recertify. And that certification process, it's kind of like getting accredited, right? They have to submit all kinds of documents on all their production processes that they meet this, and this, right? And then they get certified. And so I'll be honest with you, there's about 55 to 56 different fire truck manufacturers just in the United States. But not all of them are in the DLA system because they might not match up with the certifications that they have to have. So a lot of times you're just looking at the bigger ones, the Oshkoshes, the Pierce, the E1s, the Rosenbauers, things like that, right? The other point that you brought up with, and you're going to have to refresh my memory, that you
clean cab, maybe?
Yeah, so the clean cab. So we've started down that path with clean cab because we did the idle reduction technology many years ago, reducing the fossil footprints. We also went with the Ward diesel on all fire trucks starting in 2018, the 2018 buy. And people say, yeah, but that's just for the fire station. That's not true. The war diesel system can be engaged when you're out at the incident scene, which you sometimes are generating even more fossil fuels out there. Because a lot of times, if you guys think about it, you're bringing patients by your truck, or you're staging them around your vehicles and things like that, right? You can engage that system there, which is going to reduce your fossil footprint that you're putting at the scene. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So we're doing things like that. Now, one thing that with the 𝗙𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗱 is that it's going to take up a lot of compartment space now, because you cannot put nothing in the cab, because then it won't be clean. You guys follow where I'm going?
Yes, sir.
So your air packs, you guys are putting, if you're putting lights or EMS equipment, anything.
Time to really take a hard look at the truck and say, okay, what's important and what's not,
Right. And so there's designs out there, but I will tell you this, what would help us, because, and that's the other point I was going to get to, is we buy trucks to the NFPA standard because it's performance based, right? And I know you talked about if you were looking at a magazine and you saw this really cool fire truck, it's nice and shiny, it's got all the latest toys on it, right? Well, we can't call out specific vendors. If you look at a fire truck, you got about, depending on the type of truck, you might have up to 200 different vendors on that truck. Yeah, on all four sides of it, it might say Pierce, but internally, it's like fantasy football. They pick their vendors that they want to put on their truck, right? So, if you, in the system that we use in the garment, you can't call out a specific vendor when you're speccing out a fire truck. Now, maybe in the public you can, but not in the federal government.
Yeah, it's very similar to like structural ensemble. They walked us through that process when we went through AFIT, and it's like somebody else is the vendor for gloves and the different vendor for the helmet and for the boots, and obviously the turnout coat and turnout pants.
Right. So you couldn't say like, I want a Whelen 500 on every one of my trucks, because now you're calling out a specific vendor, and now you could end up having a protest against you by other ones that can't get, say, the Whelen products, or they can't get the same discount.
So are there any changes on the horizon with Apparatus? I mean, we talked a little bit about the 𝗙𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗱 shifting and the reducing the carbon footprint on the trucks and stuff. Are there any major changes, ultra high pressure, anything else beyond that?
Ultra high pressure is starting to grow a little bit on the structural side. There is some companies out there that are actually doing retrofits onto that side of firefighting with ultra high pressure. Obviously, the 𝗙𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗃 is probably the biggest because of health and safety for firefighters. And you're going to see that. I guess the other thing that you're going to see a big change with fire trucks is with the NFPA standards. And that's where they are now restructuring the standards, and they're combining some of them all into one. So an example is for procurement of fire trucks, they're going to combine NFPA 414, 1901, and 1906 all into one standard. And I believe it's going to be, not 100% sure, but I believe it's going to be called NFPA 1900. And it's just the way the NFPA is going down that path. And they're doing it with all other kind of standards as well, whether it be in the ProQual series or on the rescue side, things like that, where they're going to now take and merge standards that are the same into one standard. So that's probably the biggest thing that I see outside of the 𝗙𝗽𝗀𝗀𝗃, because that's driving a lot of manufacturers to relook at fire trucks and where things are stored and put and stuff like that, right?
Right. Yeah. Talking a little bit about ultra high pressure, you mentioned that's going on in the structural apparatus, and it already is. I've touched a truck that has ultra high pressure. Why that technology? We get a lot of people I don't know, not us on the podcast, but you see it maybe on social media and other places or within the fire department. What is the benefit to ultra high pressure compared to your traditional way of putting water on fire?
Well, the big thing is you're going to use less water, so you're going to be able to sustain operations longer, right? To me, that's the biggest benefit that you see with it, right? And with anything, it doesn't matter what it is in fire. With anything that you see where there's change, there's always going to be some pushback, right? And,
Yeah, we hate change and we hate the way things are.
And a lot of times, I mean, fire service has always kind of been this way, right? That if somebody's name isn't on it or they didn't invent it, then it might not be very good. That's just the way it works in the firehouse. It doesn't matter if it was 50 years ago or if it's today, right? It's always been that way in the fire service. So when it comes to change, sometimes we can be very stoic because it's the unknown, right? And the big thing is being able to understand the technology and how it works. So do due diligence with it and train on it and get used to it, right?
Absolutely.
Now, have we seen out in the field? I mean, you probably have a higher level perspective than we do at our individual bases. Have we seen out in the field people putting it into practice and it actually responding as expected versus kind of a laboratory training setting to where people are using it on actual emergencies and reporting back, hey, this stuff works?
Yeah, I get it all the time from people that said, hey, I was a doubter at first, but I've been out using it and now I understand it. It actually, that technology put the first F-35 fire out. It was a P-34 at Eglin. And right after they did it, the fire chief was calling me. He said, I just want to let you know, they put this F-35 out that was on fire. He said, because it got there quicker than the other trucks.
You mean the rapid intervention vehicle got there rapidly? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just messing with you.
So yeah, as this thing gets utilized, people train on it more, understand it. People say, hey, it doesn't do no good into the wind. Well, normal streams don't do that great into the wind either, right? Depending on the wind. So is it affected by some winds? Yes, because obviously the droplets are a little smaller. They're going to be a little more affected. But last time I checked, we weren't taught to fight fire into the wind. I mean, not to our effective extent, right? So, but I do see it increasing more in the fire service because we are fielding calls on the FAA side from the airports. And I know the Navy is, if I'm not mistaken, they're starting to put it on their structural pumpers because I go to the manufacturers and when I go to inspect our trucks, I'll see one of the other services trucks there and the manufacturer will tell me that, hey, the Navy's putting this on their truck now, structural side. So it's growing. So we will see what the future holds, right?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So moving on from vehicles, here you're also plugged into the EMS program for Air Force Fire and Emergency Services. We spoke a little bit with Chief Morris and Chief Wagner about it on their episodes, but just curious what your role in EMS is and if you have any updates or information you'd like to share.
Sure. So I'm the EMS program manager. So I'm kind of equivalent to what they call a lead licensing agent for the state. So for the Air Force, we've agreed to follow the National Registry for the different certification levels and licensing. And so I'm equivalent to a state office. So say the state of Virginia or the state of Texas or anything like that, right? So the program management side would fall under us at AFCEC, and I'm the program manager. And then we also have Mr. John Hearn, who works with me on dealing with anything on the EMS side of the house. Okay. So we're the execution arm of things. So if there's anything that if a department's going to teach a initial EMR course or initial EMT course or recertification, maybe a refresher, or making folks EMT instructors, that all falls under us at AF FES and me as the program manager.
Any insight into plugging EMT into tech school? Have you had conversations about that?
Oh, yeah. So just let you guys know. So a couple years ago, when Chief Wagner first took over, we met out at Nellis Air Force Base with the Surgeon General's office, because there is some movement in the DoD world where there's a new organization, Defense Health Agency, DHA, that's taking over, is supposed to be in the process of taking over pre-hospital or hospital operations, right? And they've basically made the statement that pre-hospital EMS response would be a fire-based response. So we met out there with them, and I think that's when he got his feet wet with the EMS process. And there was some agreements that were made during that week in meetings, and so we've been moving forward with this program since then. And one of the subjects was teaching EMT at the schoolhouse. One thing that you have to be aware of that has to be fixed is in the Air Force, in the AETC world, you can only have one tech school for a particular training area. And right now, EMT is taught in San Antonio on the Surgeon General side. So we would have to be able to crack that nut, per se, to be able to teach it at the DoD Fire Academy.
Or else send our students to 2 different tech schools in order to get certified. That's probably the opposite side of that coin, yeah.
Just like special operators go to 4 or 5 different places.
Yes, each branch is on the Special Forces side. Each branch's service has unique things like diving or parachuting, things like that, right? So yes, you're absolutely right. Which, by stating that, you just identified that there's going to be some logistics, some resources, some funding,
money.
Well, yeah. And maybe some people out in the field don't realize that all that has to take place behind the scenes before you can move forward, right? So the thing with the schoolhouse that we're moving towards is it was agreed upon around all the service components is to get to the National Registry EMR. And then eventually on the Air Force side, get to EMT. If I was a betting person, and I try never to bet, I'm going to say it's going to be a ways down the road. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not where you can pull out that easy button and hit it. It's just not that easy. There's just a lot of things that have to happen first, and agreements. Like I said, with AETC, right? For one. The other thing is, you got to remember now, if you're going to put them through the medical piece of it, it's probably going to be on the front end, right? And that test isn't easy on the EMT side, right? And if you fail, then what do you do with them?
Yeah, Jeff and Cody on our episode that we covered at tech school, they're both instructors at tech school. They mentioned that EMR is it's historically the hardest thing that they do in tech school, and there's a lot of failures, and they get a lot of opportunities to pass it. But ever since they transitioned to the National Registry, EMR, it's pretty difficult. So now if you plug in EMT, what is the attrition rate going to look like for firefighters in tech school?
Yeah, and I don't think they're 100% up to the National Registry yet. I know they're standing up a testing center with Pearson View, because that's that has to take place, right? And that has to, obviously, the career field manager is who handles with the DoD Fire Academy. So it'll be him working with the DoD Fire Academy, and then obviously our office, because we're what you would call the state of the Air Force as the lead licensing agent. So we'll have to work through those steps of when they get that testing center up and things like that, right? Because if there's any kind of audits or investigations, then the National Registry is going to come to us for us to execute that.
So if fire protection took over emergency medical services, would there be any reason for 4Ns or medical technicians in the Air Force to receive their National Registry EMT? I guess in a perfect world, that teaching could somehow transition to Goodfellow, and 4Ns wouldn't have to do it anymore, so that it wouldn't be in two places in ATC.
Well, I think they still have to maintain it on their core skill set based on their work in the MTFs and stuff like that. I don't want to go too much into on their side.
Yeah, I'm getting into the weeds a little bit. I guess I'm just thinking out loud that if they're not doing anything emergency related, I get that they have emergency departments, but if they're not doing anything else emergency related, why would they have to participate in an EMT or get registered as EMTs?
Yeah.
Again, I'm thinking out loud. I don't know enough about it, but
yeah, I mean, there's some things I know, but I probably don't need to say
That's
because
all right.
it's not my avenue to speak on about them, right? But they have their clinical side, and then you have the response side, and and every base can be a little different on how they approach that with what services they offer at an MTF. So right. Maybe they won't have as big a footprint once this is rolled out in the Air Force. I don't know, right? And it might come down to where they say offer them if they'd like to cross train into fire, if to stay, in the Air Force or whatever. I don't know. I mean, there's probably tons of possibilities out there going forward, but this is still in the crawl phase when it comes to DHA and rolling this all out, because it doesn't matter what branch of service you're in. The medical's going under DHA. So
it sounds like a lot of red tape to navigate, and hopefully Ben and I see it in our career.
And hopefully we don't get
we'll
caught in the middle of the crap show that'll inevitably happen as transition occurs, and who's doing training and
yeah, we could be leading through the transition, potentially.
You could. I mean, there's going to be a lot of challenges when it's a big elephant when you're talking about doing it across DOD as one big agency at DHA, and then establishing people that can oversee at the service components level, right? So,
well, as long as we're getting, I think, the right order of operation of resources and then requirements, and not the other way around, where we have requirements that we're trying to duct tape and baling wire together. As far as, okay, well, you need to have 15 EMTs per station or X or whatever the case.
Yeah, don't put the cart before the horse.
Yeah, so rolling out in the right order, I think would make everyone feel really comfortable with it versus requirements, then resources, and then each base does their own thing. And I think that's where a lot of people's uneasiness about it comes from, is just kind of being unsure about what the resources are going to look like at the end.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm along that line too, because when you start looking at stuff and then they say, hey, we don't have the money, just look at what we're doing with today with continuing resolution and things like that, right? And budgeting and all that. And they say, hey, we just don't have the funds now. So then you're like, well, what are we going to do, right? But they say you still got to make the job work. So we shall see. We shall see.
Well, Fred, we appreciate your work thus far, and moving EMS forward. Everything that you've done, I know that you're probably not going to. I don't know how long you plan on sticking around, but you may not stick around to see to see it come to fruition. But we appreciate the work that you've done thus far, because I think, me personally, this is Matt speaking, that EMS in the fire department makes the most sense, considering our civilian counterparts do that. We're in the business of providing emergency service to communities. It just makes sense to be under our roof, but that's me talking again. So I'd like to transition to SCBA if that works for you.
Sure.
We know that we've had our MSAs for going on just over a decade, if my memory serves me right. And I understand we're transitioning to a new one. I don't know if you can fill us in on what's going on there and what we can expect.
Yeah. So when we bought MSA, we started implementing it out into the field in 2008. And the big push, obviously, is what expires is the cylinders. They have a 15-year, right? And that's based from Department of Transportation. And you can't get waivers. I don't care what anybody says, they're not going to waiver that, right? So We started back in 2016, and the reason why is because we kind of worked backwards from 23, knowing that we needed to get funding, we needed to get the process in place, we needed to get the request for proposal, or what they refer to as RFP, out there, because every time we bought air packs, it's ended up in court because it's big money. And anytime you have a large buy, somebody that don't get the award is not going to be happy, right? And so it's and that's why we started working backwards from 23, thinking that we had to lay in a year, because when we went from Intersparrow to MSA, it was in court for a year. Those that don't know that. And so we started 2016, we started a working group, and we go through the Life Cycle Center, through what they call the Human Services and Sustainment Office. And then there's 2 contracting offices also there at Robins Air Force Base. And we've been working with them. And I can tell you that on June 13th, we released the RFP. And that basically, it put our PD or spec, they call it purchase description, out on the street for vendors to bid on it. Now, one of the requirements that we put in there is that whoever bid on it, their air packs had to be certified and approved through NIOSH and the NFPA 2018 standard. So somebody just couldn't say that they meet the 2018 standard. They have to be certified and approved through NIOSH and all those testing processes for them to be able to bid on this contract.
And then they have to have the J-Fire capability built in. Am I getting ahead of myself?
Yeah, that's on top of that. Now, one difference you'll probably see with this buy is we're going with the commercial pack, with the civilian mask and everything like that. And then we'll have a second mask for the military firefighter. So that'll be a separate thing that we'll only buy for the military firefighter, whether it be active duty, reserve, or guard.
Logistics guys are excited to hear that they got twice as many masks to worry about now.
Yeah, well,
or SCBA.
Yeah, the thing last time was the mask was too heavy, it was cumbersome, the whole 9 yards. Right?
It is.
So
it is. Yeah.
The working group that was formed. So people understand too, is we're just not buying fire self-contained breathing apparatus just for fire. I'm the program manager for the SCBA, and there's other functional communities. You got the aircraft maintenance that deal with hydrazine. You got the medical side, and you also have our other CE functionals of EOD and EM. So there's 5 total functional communities that we're working with in this program for procurement.
And we'll all use the same type, right? We're not going to go fire will use one and EOD will use another.
The only thing different with fire would be the J-Fire mask, if I'm understanding right.
Yes, sir. Yep, they're all going to get the commercial, and then fire is going to have the additional mask.
Now, you said the bidding opened up in June. Have we come to a point where we know who we're selecting, or
no?
Is that going to be announced soon?
We still got many steps to go. So the RFP was released, and in that RFP, just to kind of give you some idea, in that RFP, it was, I believe it's 23 or 24 PDF documents that make that up, and some of them are as much as 123 pages long. Right. So this is awesome. A massive. At the end of the day, we're looking at around, with the different functional communities, of about 14,000 SCBAs. And we're estimating about $109 million contract. That's just an estimate. I could be high or low. Because the other thing that the fire wanted on this buy was the SAR kit. Because in the past, we've never really addressed that. The fire departments had to get that on their own. But with the way the funding works nowadays, a lot of the fire guys in the working group said, hey, can we get that in the buy as well? So we're looking at 200 plus SAR kits. And when I say that, you're looking at the manifolds, the cart, the, 4 300 sections of hose, the escape bottle. Escape bottles, I think there's 4 of them. That's been added in here as well. Okay. So we did reduce the numbers on the fire side of our SCBAs because we did a new base of issue that's in the allowance standard a couple of years ago. And we based it on the vehicle set versus in the past, it was always like a firefighter got one. And if he was military, he got another one. And then if, then they maybe threw in the option that the fire chief just wanted an extra 50, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah,
we really looked hard at the base of issue this time, and we reduced some of our numbers here because the last buy we were a little over 17,000 air packs that we ended up procuring, and we didn't buy last time for the aircraft maintenance folks. So we've it's been in the works, and it's kind of good now to see the RFP out there on the street. With that, though, we're getting questions every day. And obviously, what's going on in the world with COVID-19 is throwing us a little curveball, because once the proposals are submitted back to us, then our next step is to go out to 4 different locations that's already been picked by the functional communities to do evaluations of the air packs that's been submitted. Okay. And those locations are Eielson in Alaska. We're going to get cold weather tests in there, as well as the aircraft maintenance wanted it done there. And then Beale Air Force Base, Minot, and the Colorado Springs area, because we'll get multiple bases in the Colorado Springs area. So those are.
I have a feeling that Chief Smith lobbied to have you guys come to Beale.
No, that was from the aircraft maintenance side.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chief Smith. I didn't mean it.
Yeah. He's probably going to be happy we're coming there, but
yeah, I'm sure.
I think actually we're using like the training officers and any of their functional community leads at those bases as our POCs. One of the things that's hurting us is obviously COVID-19 because of restriction of movement, things like that. So as soon as we get the proposals back, then we're going to start looking at scheduling to go to these installations and do the evaluations, and see what happens.
Now, does this upcoming purchase also take care of all of our UTCs, our downrange locations, all of those kind of contingency operations as well?
Yes, sir. Yeah, this is Air Force enterprise-wide buy. So,
roger that. Speaking of UTCs and deployments and stuff, I have a feeling this next topic will tie into that a little bit. In the read ahead documents, you mentioned something about an equipment working group. I don't personally know anything about it, so I'd love for you to tell us about that. What your role is with that? It seems like you're part of every working group in the Air Force, but what's this one about?
No, I'm not part of every working group in the Air Force. I got a few, but so that
we got to pick on you,
yeah,
a little bit.
I know. So the equipment working group actually came out of the strategic the planning initiative that they put together a few years ago, and one of the strategic items was establish a vehicle working group, and then out of that they were seeing how that group was going. So then they said equipment. And it just kind of stuck with me because of operations. So that's kind of how I picked up on that. So I want to say about a month ago, they asked me to start forming a working group to look at technology and other things like that, going forward strategically for the fire service. So far we've got, I want to say about 15 to 20 folks that have signed up to be part of the working groups, or part of the equipment working group anyways. And I'm just giving it a couple more weeks for the commands to do their due diligence to going out and searching for folks that want to be part of a working group. And then we'll start having monthly meetings, and then periodically report to the Air Force Fire Chief and the fire panel on any recommendations or course of actions from the equipment working group. So
So I understand there's I know that there's a place in Grissom where all of this stuff is kept. Does this working group have anything to do with that, or do you have your hand in that warehouse at Grissom?
Yeah, Grissom has got some warehouses that we keep equipment, like you talked a little bit about UTCs. Kevin Matlock handles UTCs on that part, and he's got some of that stuff there when they did some reorganization a few years ago. But we actually started even before that. Many years ago, we would centrally buy items and store them there like hazmat suits. And then we would let the installations know, hey, we were able to secure, I don't know, say $1 million, and we went out and bought thousands of hazmat suits, level A or level B. And if there's any bases that need any, have them contact me. And that's continued over the years. There's some monitors there, some nozzles. We still have some hazmat suits there.
We did a big central buy for extrication equipment a couple of years ago now, yeah?
We did a big buy for it, yeah. We had 75 installations contact us for the hydraulics. And and what we ended up doing is we knew that some bases when what I call turn in their homework, right? And we put a deadline, 30 days, let us know who wants it, right? And you're just going to have some out there. You guys were in school one day. You probably didn't always turn your homework in when you're supposed to.
Yep.
So we knew that would happen. So we bought an extra 10 hydraulic kits, right? And the original 75 got their stuff, and wouldn't you know it, when those bases start getting their stuff, then
Hey, I want mine.
It's like working in a 911 center, right? Phones just ringing off the hook, emails coming in. Where's mine at? When do I get mine? I'm pretty sure we ordered one.
Oh, you didn't send that.
Yeah,
you didn't send me that email.
Yeah, it did come in. The post office didn't deliver it. So those were gone. Those 10 extra that we ordered at Grissom were gone within 7 days.
Longer than I would have thought. I would have thought maybe 3.
Yeah, some of it took me time to get the addresses and the information from them and track that. Man, these went quick. So and we've looked at doing it again. The problem is we just haven't been able to secure, because when we do a buy like that, as I stated before in the fire trucks, we don't get any other money, only for fire trucks. So this is all unfunded. So we go in at the first of the year and we put in for some unfundeds, and sometimes we're successful and sometimes we're not, right?
So what's the end goal of the equipment working group then? Is it to standardize across the fleet, or is it to save money on overhead by buying in bulk? I mean, or all of the above, or is there something else that we're missing?
Well, I think it's to look at technology and to look at what's out there that's could make more effective and efficient operations, right? Like maybe the group wants to look at chainsaws or K12s, right? What's the latest technology out there that'll make it even better for us? It could be like, if this group was formed a few years ago, it could have been like, hey, what about hydraulics? Why carry all these hydraulic hoses around when we can use batteries and have more of an effective operation, right? So the goal that they've told me, and this is from Chief Wagner and the fire panel, from the strategic initiative, is to look at technology and where things are going in the future and to see if we can stay ahead of the game, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we had a guest a few episodes ago, Whit Dotson. He was big into some hose and nozzle advancements, and talked a lot about the technology and the science behind it. Man, it sounds
He'd
like
make a great guy. Member for your working group.
So Whit, I know you're listening. He's, it was released 30 minutes ago, and Whit is listening to it right now. I guarantee it. But hop on this working group, man. Email the man. So
yeah, no, I mean that's and so that's kind of the crux of the working group, to try to look at things in the future and make fire and emergency services in the Air Force better, right?
Yes, sir. So talking a little bit about NFPA committees, you mentioned that you're on a few of those. How many are you on? What's your role? Or are you on one?
No, well, I'm on 3 I just got put on a new one, but I'm on the 472, NFPA 472, the hazmat. And on that one, you have 1072, you have 473, which is the EMS. You have 475, which is if somebody was to start out from scratch building up a hazmat program in a department. So that makes up what I call the hazmat NFPA standards. And then I'm also on the NFPA 1500, occupational safety and health. And on that one, you have 1500, you got 1521, which is safety officer. You got 1561 ICS. You got 1581, which is infectious disease. 1582, which is your physicals, medical. 1583, which is firefighter fitness, and then 1584 rehab. The brand new one I got put on is going to be 1585 contamination control. Now, and I stated earlier about how the NFPA is restructuring. So on the 472, that is the very first committee the NFPA started combining standards. And on that one, they're combining 472, 473, and 1072, and it's going to become NFPA standard 470. And I've been on that one since 2004. So 16 years I've been on that one. On NFPA 1500, I've been on that one since 2005. And they are combining, they are going to pull, right now the talk is that they're going to pull into the new contamination control one, 1585. They're going to pull 1581 and possibly 1582 into that, right? So I guess you'd say three total committees for NFPA with a grand total of, I don't know, that's probably around 10 to 12 different standards.
Now, do you sit on these in your personal capacity or in your role as an Air Force FES liaison or member?
No, I'm on these for the Air Force.
Okay.
So I represent the Air Force, and a lot of times the other services will contact me about information on it as well. So I'm on what they call the technical committees for these standards, and the technical committees are the principal consensus body that's responsible for writing those line items that are in those standards and updating them, whether it be through revisions from, say, public comment or committee comment or lessons learned based on incidents. And the technical committee reports to the next level would be the correlation committee. And then that reports to the governing body of the NFPA when it comes time to if there's any issues with any of the changes that a standard's changing to, because on every NFPA standard, most of them change every 5 years. It used to be some were 3, some were 4, but they've changed it now to where it's just 5 years. If one changes before the 5-year mark, it's because of a short cycle, because of like what they're doing now, where they're combining standards, 2 or 3 or 4 into one, and they might have to change one of the standards where it was only out for a couple years, but to be able to get it into the new one, they got what they call a short cycle it, right?
And the big draw to have the Air Force involved in this, I would guess, is because we're heavily a recipient of the rules, right? I mean, we bind ourselves to the NFPA, and so it's important for us to have a voice in that product.
Yes, because we've signed up to incorporate the NFPA standards. And then if there's line items in them that we just can't, then, we would do the technical implementation guide, or the TIGs. If there's just something because of us being in the military or wherever, right, that we just can't come to all of them, right? Or that the Air Force has, say, because you got to remember the NFPA standards are minimum consensus standards, right? We might go above that based on an AFI or a DODI, something along that line, right?
So as a member of a NFPA committee, I'm trying to understand. Well, obviously, I've never been on a committee, so I don't understand what goes on there. But is it something when changes are initiated, do we kind of go around the table like, all right, what do we need to fix? How does a change happen?
So a couple different ways. So as I stated before, like on the fire trucks, right now they're combining 414, 1901, and 1906. So they're pulling them into a document, and when they're going to do that, they open it up for comments. And the first draft is where the committee gets together and they start reviewing public comments. So you say both of you could go on to the NFPA site to any one of the standards, and obviously you guys know how to get in there and get into a standard itself, and you can make public comment on that line item. All right. And then when that committee gets together for that, between the first draft or say the second draft, then they have to adjudicate the public's comments. They either have to accept them, or they can accept them in part with some edits, or they can reject them. Okay. And if say they reject them or they accept them in part with some changes, you can follow that on the NFPA under that particular standard when it's in that review process. So another example is we have that vehicle working group, and a lot of the guys that are on that group, guys and girls are on that group, say, hey, we want clean cab. We want you to buy everything now clean cab. And I said, well, it don't exactly work that way. We've been trying to get there, but we need the NFPA standards to change too. That will help us because we buy to the NFPA procurement standard, the design standard, right? So if they make changes in that, then that will drive to where I can tell the life cycle folks, we have to change some of our specs because we got to incorporate some of this clean cab design stuff. Does that make sense?
Yep. So tell those working group members to hop on the NFPA website and everybody at one time.
And I say, and this is where I say all the time, if you want to make a change, you want to make a difference in this world, go up there and submit public comment. That's how you make a difference in the fire service. If you know, there's a lot of great ideas out there on social media. Take those great ideas that you're typing up on social media and go to the NFPA standards and get them under public comments and go from there, right?
Absolutely.
Obviously, they don't always, because people get a little shy, right? And I don't know how.
Well, not on Facebook. They don't get shy.
Of course.
No.
Well, put your money where your mouth is. Like get on there,
right.
submit it, and if they don't accept it, then they don't accept it. But give them a chance to say no.
Exactly, and it doesn't cost you anything. So, go submit the comments. But that's just kind of one example. I tell that vehicle working group, now is the time because it's open for public comment. Whatever you don't like in the document or something that you've seen out there that another department has bought and it makes sense for clean cab, and there's a line item in that NFPA standard that you can tweak that would lead you more towards gaining that clean cab, go for it. That's what the process is there for. The NFPA is a great organization, and it makes a big difference. And that's why I say, if you want to be a leader, jump on that and go make the comments. From a committee perspective, I know I'll have the opportunity if I have comments to make when the committee gets together. Because like I said, we review the public comments and then the committee gets to make some comments too. So if there's some things in the Air Force, or if there's some things that I see that they want to change that's going to affect us with, say, money, resources, or manpower, things like that, then I might have to, make comments on our side so that it does. We don't get railroaded on requirements in there, right? I'll give an example. New York City is on every one of the committees that I'm on. If you incorporate, say, 1 hour of new training into, say, like NFPA 472, it's going to cost them over $10 million just based on the number of firefighters they have. So, when it comes to the technical committee, that's just an example of something that somebody that's on the committee has the responsibility to consider for who they're representing. And I will tell you, you have on any of these committees, only 1/3 of the committee can be from the fire service. So
That's an
if you were
interesting
taking
fun fact.
votes, and there's normally, it usually maxes out at either 33 or 35 committee members. If you think about it, fire only gets 1/3 of the votes. So 2/3 comes from, say, other industry, maybe private entities, things like that. So 2/3 can easily outvote fire in any kind of committee.
Well, the upside is if you don't like something that's in the NFPA, we can just write a TIG, right?
That's true, but you got to have the right justification, right?
Right, I got it.
Yeah.
I was kind of joking.
But I would like to invite either one of you two down when the next time we do a TIG, so that you guys can feel the pain of going through that process, because it's not always easy.
Yeah, I'll take a trip.
I'd
Let's
love
do it.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey.
Panama City's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Fred, it's been great talking to you about all these committees and programs you're on. What else do you got in your mind? We got a few minutes before we need to wrap up, so just want to turn the floor over to you and see if there's anything else that we've missed.
Yeah, if you guys don't mind, I got a few things. Hopefully, I can put forward. I do want to say on the EMS side, when you go up to the Fire and Emergency Services SharePoint site, we got an EMS tab. It's currently kind of down because we're working on uploading a lot of stuff on there, like a calendar. So anybody could go on there into that calendar and see when we're teaching EMT instructor courses or things like that. So that SharePoint site should be up and running hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And I think you guys out in the field, guys and girls, everybody's really going to like it. It's going to have a ton of information on it, right? Also under the EMS, we're going under a protocol review right now. So hopefully in 2021, you're going to see new EMS protocols up there. And we did increase some level scope of practices on both the EMR and the EMT levels. On the fire truck side, the one thing I'd like to get out there that we've ran into a little bit of an issue lately with fire trucks is that when a new fire truck comes to your base, please don't touch that thing until you've had training on it. We've had some trucks that's been damaged, fire pumps damaged, trucks, different components on the truck that, that's gotten damaged before the training could even be conducted. So please wait until you've been trained on the truck, because there is a lot of new technology on it. And if you're not 100% sure how it works, just kind of wait till the manufacturer comes in there and does training. I know we've run into a few issues because of COVID-19 and get manufacturers out there to train, depending on where you are in the world. But trust me, if it can be worked out, please wait until they get there, okay? We were looking at buying some hazmat suits on a buy. I don't know exactly where it's at, but we're buying level A and level B suits. I don't know where it's at in the process, but once they are procured and at Grissom, we'll be sending an email out. And we did a pretty good buy on this one as well. So that'll be available. And obviously we wanted to do it on the level B side because of what's going on in the world to help the fire departments out there that might be low on those kind of Tyvek suits, right? And the other thing, I guess, for those that are wanting to set up their National Registry account at their department, remember there's two different sides of the National Registry. There's the side where you teach initial courses. That's the program account. And then there's the side where you do recertifications, and that's the agency account. And right now, we got maybe 25% of the bases that have signed up for them. So you're going to need to do that to get through the National Registry if you're teaching. And we're here to help you, both myself and John Hearn on the EMS side. So, and those are the big things I wanted to say at the end to make the field aware of. And I appreciate you guys' time immensely, what you guys are doing with this. I think it's great. And anytime you can communicate and tell it like it is, it helps the fire service know what's going on, right?
We appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate your time and, sharing all those nuggets of information. Just another way to get the message out, beyond the WebEx seminars and emails and Facebook posts. And, hopefully a lot of people can consume this way. You get it straight from the horse's mouth. So appreciate your time, Fred.
Oh, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fire Dog Podcast. You can find more content just like this regularly posted to our Facebook page at facebook.com/the Fire Dog Podcast. That's facebook.com/the Fire DAWG Podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, share this podcast with your friends and coworkers. This is Matt Wilson with co-host Ben Perry and guest Mr. Fred Terryn. Until next time, stay safe.